Hey, I'm Vicki Stark, and I received a bunch of great questions, and tonight I've chosen 3 questions that are along the same theme. And that theme is about how to move forward against wife abandonment syndrome. And so the first question is from Flora, and she says, I was reading about the narcissist path relationships, and a lot of it, to my horror, really resonated. Do you think a lot of us may have ourselves in this dynamic? I'm really trying to be mindful of how I show up in any future relationship and what I can do better and what I can watch out for. So I know, a lot of you might be saying, what's a narcissist empath relationship? So I wanted to describe you. So what that is a narcissist, you understand. That's a person who really doesn't have a lot of need for other people, and really are quite focused on their own satisfaction, their own happiness, putting themselves, feeling as though they are the center of the universe. But I bet you may not have heard the term empath, and it comes from the word empathetic. And those are people who are very tuned in to other people's feelings. So they're really empathetic, and they're really committed to taking care of their partner, of the other person in the relationship, and really being self-sacrificing and putting the other person first. So Flora's question is, do I think that a lot of women in our community were involved in that kind of a narcissist empath relationship? And it's an interesting question, because what I see over and over again is that a lot of women that I've worked with are very self-sacrificing, are very loving, are very giving. They put their husband's career first. They're not demanding. They put up with a lot. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's an unhealthy relationship with the husband. It only becomes unhealthy if he takes advantage of it, and if she is always self-sacrificing and she feels as though she's walking on eggshells, or he has so much of the upper hand. And then in that case, I think it is that sort of synchronicity of a narcissist and an empath. But I don't want women who are kind and loving and giving to feel bad about themselves, because I believe that that's a beautiful way to be. It's just to be able to have the proper boundaries so that you know when somebody's walking all over you, and so that you know when it's okay to say, no, I don't want to do that, or I prefer to do this thing, or to state your preference and ask for what you want. So to be an empathetic person is not a bad thing. It's only if you don't have the boundaries to be able to recognize when you're being taken advantage of, when it's an unfair relationship or an unhealthy relationship, and when you're always giving in and being called upon to do what the other person wants. So for Flora, in a future relationship, beautiful to be kind and loving, and hopefully to meet somebody who's also kind and loving and giving. And so that you can, really connect in that kind of a way. But to be aware, if you're the one who's always giving, who's always sacrificing, who's always shoring up the other person, and there's not that reciprocity in the relationship. So thank you, Flora, for that question. The next question is from Christina, and she says, today I was talking to a friend who's been separated 6 months and dating. She said she's noticed that nearly every man she's met has painted his ex in a bad light, especially those who've confessed to affairs. The word that comes up most often is controlling. Doesn't that sound familiar? Clearly they're shifting blame, but what does all this say? And is this a norm among divorced men? Should it be a red flag to hear a man say unkind things about his ex? The ex-wives can't all be nuts. Should we be careful about what we say when we date again? So, yeah, I mean, this is also a really great question and an important thing to be sensitized to. No, not all divorced men say mean things about their ex-wives. People got divorced for some reason, and often there's hurt feelings, but that doesn't mean that these guys have to badmouth the ex-wife. And yes, Christina, it is a red flag. If you're meeting a man who is putting her down all the time, his ex-wife, has a very poor relationship with her, it doesn't necessarily mean that you should completely count him out, but you should definitely be aware of that, and recognize that if he had to slash and burn in that relationship in order to get out of it, it's not a healthy thing. It's always so much better if you meet someone who's divorced and they have a working relationship with their ex, or if they don't have children, at least there's some respectful talk about this person that they share their life with. So I think that you do have to be sensitized to that, and that if a man is bad-mouthing his ex-wife, to give it some thought and maybe to sort of tread carefully until you really get to know the situation, which is not to say that some ex-wives might have been controlling and might have been difficult and might have, emotional problems or mental problems. Sometimes that's absolutely the case. But if he's the only person in the world who has something negative to say about her and everyone else seems to think she's great, I would really think about that. And about the word controlling, I just want to throw in there that a lot of times when men leave, they say, oh, my wife is so controlling. And it always cracks me up, because what controlling means is that she took care of everything. She made everything work in the household. He said, go ahead, do what you want. And then when he's leaving, he says, you're so controlling. So it's a very common word that's sort of bantered about. And the final question is from Isabel, who says, my therapist is asking me not to start seeing other people. It's only been 3 months since he dumped me, but it feels a lot longer, more like an eternity. And telling me that I'm vulnerable at this stage. I feel I need to expand my circle of friends to fight solitude. What are your thoughts on the subject? Okay, this is my thought on the subject. I think your therapist is right. I think that particularly if it's a runaway husband kind of scenario, you haven't worked it through in 3 months. It's really hard to really have worked it through in 3 months. I think that there's a lot of grieving to be done, a lot of integrating what happened to be done, and that sometimes people are in a rush to move on and are looking for somebody new to make them feel worthwhile and make them feel better. So this is what I have to say about that situation, which is that I think you have to get to the point where you're comfortable being on your own, where it's not agonizing anymore, where you can spend an evening on your own and read a book or do things, talk to a friend, go out and take a walk or whatever, and you're not feeling like this acute bereft pain that you might be feeling early on. So I think that once you can be comfortable being on your own, then you're bulletproof. Then it's very good. Then you're in a good state of mind where it would be healthy for you to maybe, meet somebody or start dating again. But the last thing that you need to do is jump too early into another relationship without having worked through the whole grief process and without having worked through the resolution from the end of that marriage. You can do it. I know it's painful, but I know you can do it. And I know you'll know when you're comfortable in your skin when you're home alone at night. So that's us for today. I want to tell you that I've been posting these live Q&A on my YouTube channel, which is Vicky Stark. So if you want to look at some old episodes, you can go to my YouTube channel and take a look. So take care, be well, and I'll see you next week.